Comeback Committee, along with Jeff Hunt from the Columbia County Chamber of Commerce. Columbia Comeback was created by Matt Morrell, the chair of the Board of Supervisors, and in an effort to provide a resource to businesses and organizations throughout the county to identify the issues and find solutions to problems that are relating to reopening the county for business. We're fortunate that there are 3 additional supervisors on the committee. Supervisor Lagonia, Rob Lagonia, who's here, Robert Bury, and Stira Hotline. And we're glad that they are able to be on the committee along with 16 business people and several county administrators who are subject matter experts, including the health director of the health department, representative from emergency management, and Ann Cooper from the tourism department. So it's great to have you all here. And I'll just turn it over to Jeff to welcome you as well.
Excuse me. Yes, good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. This is phase 3 of our focus group subcommittee meetings, where we'll be focusing particularly today on restaurants and food service. I know many of you have been operating since the pause has occurred and offering curbside and delivery service and takeout service. This phase is to talk about capacity within your restaurants or your, if you are a caterer, if you're able to cater events and how many people will be allowed to be in a situation where there's a gathering. So hopefully what you'll be doing is finding some information that will help you think through how you will reopen, how you will manage social distancing during this time, and how you will provide your employees with personal protection equipment to allow them to feel comfortable and for your customers to feel comfortable within going into your establishments. We have provided several resources on the ColumbiaComeback.com website for you to consider. We would like to get some of your concerns and questions answered. If we can't answer them today, we certainly will get back to you in a day or two to allow you to answer those, allow us to answer those particular questions. Again, that number, that web address is ColumbiaComeback.com. And I see Mike is gone, but I was going to turn it back over to him, but that's okay.
I just had to plug in the computer.
Gotcha. So again, welcome. I hope we learned something, and I hope we're able to compel you to start to think about how you will reopen your business once your phase comes to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. One of, as many of you know, today is the day that the governor has reopened the capital region for phase 1. Phase 1 involves construction, manufacturing, agriculture, forestry, fishing and hunting, limited retail, meaning curbside pickup or in-store pickup or drop off, and wholesale trades. The theory is that by beginning this process over 4 phases, that we'll be able to judge whether or not full-scale economic revival causes the disease to and patients to increase. One of the things about the restaurants that are currently doing takeout is that, like essential businesses, you will now have to go take a step back and complete all of the paperwork and comply with all of the regulations that will be put in place and that have been put in place for the phase 1 businesses, and that will become effective for each of the phases as they evolve. And every business is going to be reopening guidelines for your business, and a downloaded safety plan will be online. You can get it at columbiacomeback.com, or you can get it at the forward.ny.gov. The plan, there's a 11-page set of guidelines that each business owner must sign and acknowledge that they have read it and affirm that they will comply with it. There's also, every business must keep on file a safety plan detailing how they will safely operate to protect their employees and customers during the ongoing conditions. That form is also online, and it's you can fill it. It's got autofill, so you can fill it in. As each phase is opening, the state will be putting out guidelines, and I think it's useful. We discussed this yesterday with the phase 2 businesses to go online and look at what's being required of phase 1 and anticipate that basically that's what's going to be required of you as well. I think that we also will be posting online at columbiacomeback.com on the resource pages information that has been received by that we've received and others have forwarded to us using industry association guidelines and standards. Many of the businesses in each of the phases, many businesses have components of each of the phases in their business plan. For instance, we were talking earlier today with Sean Sawyer, who's here from Alana. They're a state park, so they can be open now as a state park. They can't give tours of the house because that's in stage 4 as a museum. They can't serve anything at the gift shop or cafe because that's in phase 3 as a restaurant. They can't go to work in their office because that's phase 2, which hasn't been approved for opening until they can't go to their office until then. But we don't believe that it means that you can't open or begin to conduct business until all components of your business activity meets the requirements. One of the things that is concerning is that the state has indicated that phase 2 will open 14 days from the start of phase 1, which would be June 3rd. And that would be professional services, salons, barbers, retail, administrative support, and real estate brokers. Phase 3 would be reopening beginning June 17th, so long as we don't see an adverse COVID-19 numbers go up during the previous phase openings. And that, of course, includes restaurants and food service. We have seen, however, that when the governor first announced the initial phase 1 openings, indicating that it would be 2 weeks before anyone else would be able to be included in phase 1, that within 3 or 4 days that changed. So I think that those are target dates. Our hope would be that numbers would continue to show either leveling off or decreasing on the 7 metrics that were established. And I think that the hope would be that we could start sooner. But again, this is the guidance that we have at this time. When you go and you start to open up the 11-page guidelines and you begin to develop a plan, many of your components are going to depend clearly on your own business operation, your own physical facility, and your own common sense. Obviously, the goal here is to keep the public safe, keep yourself safe, and not create an environment where the virus can easily spread. And, whether you're, when we were talking to retail, some of the certain retail stores that have a lot of open space. You have others that the quaintness of their marketing and their attraction is the boutique style of merchandising, similar to restaurants. And so when you start to look within these different phases and different industries, looking at the best practices that are available from your industry associations, looking at the specific guidelines that will be cumulative as each phase gets closer on the state website, and looking at your own knowledge and experience, developing a plan in those parameters may look tedious, but I think you each will be able to do it. One of the components of the reopening guidelines is that there will be testing. And each employee has to have their temperature taken before they can come to work. And a log has to be kept as to what that temperature was. And presumably, and your plan has to remain on file, as I said. So presumably if someone on your staff contracts the disease or the virus and the health department shows up, they're going to ask for your plan and your list, temperature list, but also the list of the people that that employee was exposed to, whether it be coworkers, delivery people, or customers. There's a provision in the, there is a more lengthy guidebook from Forward New York that you should take a look at. And again, the link is on our website and on the state's website, that describes some of these things and indicates that if your customer doesn't want to give their name, how do you do that? Your staff also, the executive order, one of the executive orders the governor signed requires anyone in contact with a customer or client has to be wearing a face mask, and that any customer or client has to have a face mask if they're in public. There's some discussion as to whether everyone needs a face mask, but I think that's kind of the rule for right now. In the early aspects of this, I think some of the essential business people who were not engaged in interfacing with the public didn't have to wear one. But I think if you read the executive order that if you're in public, you have to wear one. Question came up this morning. What if you have the irrational customer who refuses to and makes a scene about it? We've all seen that on TV, unfortunately. And again, that could very well be a difficult circumstance, less in an office, more likely, in a public space or a restaurant or some other type of business. I think that there are also specific guidelines that will evolve as to when phase 3 opens. What does that mean? Does that mean, it certainly doesn't mean, as you know, you can go back to 100% layout of your floor space in restaurants and as you did before this. And I think they're talking now at 50% of your maximum capacity, which I would assume means what the fire marshal would allow if there was a fire marshal. And I think that that's going to be very difficult because, not only are these restrictions in place, but how do you go about first having the capital to restock your operation, purchase all of the personal protection equipment required, buying additional sanitation supplies, designating an employee perhaps as the person who watched the door so someone doesn't just come in and walk to their regular table. I think that kind of the patrol person to safety patrol person from grade school, get those belts back on. But it's going to be complex. But to me, the more complex part is you all have fixed costs, which you've been having to pay or work through as we go through this. But now as you increase your variable costs, how are you able to ramp your revenue up at the same pace as you're ramping up your variable costs so that this doesn't just become a bad spiral for you? And I think that's where all of your business skills and talents will come into play. I think everyone should be looking at their business plan and doing some stress testing with respect to what if it's 60% of what we were doing? What if it's 20%? Where is that breakage point? Unfortunately, Brookings Institute came out with a national study of every county dumping census data into a economic model, which may or may not be, the accuracy level of that may not be great, but they projected 400 of the 2,000 businesses in the county risk going out of business. So even if they're 10% right, it's a disaster and something that I'm sure weighs heavily in each of your minds. I think that we don't have all the answers yet. The answers change every day. We're working hard to be able to update answers, correct things that we may have said that have changed, and encourage you to continue to work with us and through other sources to keep abreast of those circumstances. Jeff, are there things that you'd like to add before we go for some questions?
Yeah, I know there's some concerns about, I just got a text from our conversation yesterday. It is acceptable to have your employee email their temperature from home, and you'll have that recorded on your via email. I haven't seen anything that requires, because that's a high demand item, thermometers for restaurants. So you can rely on self-reporting of temperatures from your employees. So I don't want you to think that is a barrier or something that may be too time consuming for you to consider when you are filling out the paperwork. And remember, the paperwork is not being submitted to the state. It is only there in case an inspector or someone comes and wants to view your records. So we recommend that you do keep the recommended files that the governor outlines on his website. We also want you to check your industry sites. The National Restaurant Association has some guidelines that you may see that may be useful to you as you think about reopening in terms of distancing and the like. But I just wanted to make sure that you were familiar with those things. Thanks, Mike.
I see a question here. Takes me a minute to, can't look at the questions under participants. You got to go to chat. So I've seen a couple of local restaurants advertising outdoor seating as a option now. Is that allowed? Our understanding, and this question did come up and was referred to Jack Mabb at the health department. The issue is if you start to go through the levels of rules, no more than 10 people can be assembled anywhere. So if you have more than 10 people outside, I guess they could say that that's not approved. The discussion with the restaurant that's out in the country that asked that 3 weeks ago, the conclusion was that not until, it's basically your takeout people are eating on tables outside. You can't serve them outside. So they would be taking their food and just, hanging out on your property at a table. It was determined that that was not allowed. Again, if you had 20 acres and you had the tables 40 feet apart and you only had 6, and I mean, who knows? But that's why the logic of this stuff doesn't always, so they can go down the street and sit in the park and eat the food. but they can't sit on your premises. The guidance now is that that's not approved, but whether we can get there's a regional control room that's been set up that includes the 8 chief elected officials in the 8 counties of the capital region, including Matt Morrell representing Columbia County as chair of the Board of Supervisors. Also on that committee is Ruth Mahoney, the CEO of KeyBank New York, who's the co-chair of the Capital Region Economic Development Council, and General Patrick Murphy, who heads up emergency management and homeland security for the state. Whether through that online info at Capital Region Control Room, which we can get you that email address, we can get a more definitive answer, based on people thinking through how all of these segmented rules interact, particularly when businesses have multiple components in different phases. We might be able to get a clearer resolution of that. I don't see any other immediate questions. This group is a little smaller than the previous groups. Perhaps some people joined us early in an effort to get information. Do you have specific questions that you would like us to consider? And if we don't have the answers, try to get a clear reading for you.
Mike, Mike, I had one question. Are there guidelines for keeping track of independent contractors or vendors whom a business comes in contact with? I'm not sure if that's related to contact tracing, or is that just a flow of who comes in and out of your business? So if you have an answer to that one, I'm not.
My understanding is you have to keep track of that. And the reason the region couldn't open on Sunday was because we had not yet met the number of tracers. We needed 360 some tracers, and we needed 160 to go. We were able to get those quickly because in many cases, local government had staff people take the 5-hour Johns Hopkins course and get certified quickly so that we could open today. The issue there is you're not going to need all the tracers on day one because, as you open each phase, and if the disease does, or the virus does spread, then the tracers will get to work contacting you to who your supplier came in, who the driver was, what customer came in. Earlier today, someone told us that they're only taking credit cards so that they have a record of what customer was there on what day. But my understanding is that it's whoever comes visits your place of business has to be logged in and identified.
Hi, can I ask a question? Hi, I'm Liz Kirkus. I work at Basilica. I'm with Basilica Rentals that does the weddings down in the space. So hello, everyone. I think our biggest challenge, just thinking forward, is that, as you know, our weddings can be up to like over 300 people. And obviously we're having to rethink that. We've rescheduled most of our weddings up until the end of August. And we have hold dates for people moving into 2021 should we have to move them. If the metrics go right and we are in the right phasing for everything, and we can technically have an event, obviously, whether it be 50% of capacity or whatever it is, but I have a background in healthcare, so I do understand a lot of this, and I'm used to writing protocols and policies and procedures, and we will have a binder on hand with all of our information in it. But when you have a wedding, you've got the caterer, the rental company, the photographer, like all these other vendors. So if they're going to be coming into my space, am I required to gather from them their similar information, like who are their employees? What were their temperatures upon arriving to work? Like, is that something that for each of my events? And if you don't know the answer, it's fine. It's just, these are the things I think about. It would appear
that you would. Now, the question becomes, does that mean every guest? Because
right.
6 feet apart has to wear a mask? Can the bride lift it up for the bride kiss the groom part? I mean, who knows? But I think that this is a difficulty. One of the people who I think you must work with, whose name escapes me, but contacted us. Her company does 250 weddings a year, and 35% of them are in Columbia County.
Oh, it was Jeannie Stark from Hudson Valley Ceremonies. Yes.
Yeah. And, it's a very big issue. Obviously, now your 300-person wedding, can it be 150, or
Right.
can it only be 50% of the maximum capacity of the facility?
Right. So that's including the guests, the vendors, all that. Yeah. So yeah, exactly.
It's again, one of the benefits we hope will come from these conversations is that we can formulate these inquiries and conversation into questions and get them to the state, to not necessarily get them to do what we're asking, but at least to have context to the decisions that they're making and the impact it's having on individual businesses.
Right.
And we had a conversation recently with some arts and cultural organizations, including Basilica. And one of the questions is, Hudson Hall is different than PS 21 because one is outside, or is open air. Do you put tape on every third seat and people have to sit 6 feet apart? Or if I'm coming with my wife, who I'm otherwise self-sheltering or sheltering with, can she sit next to me?
Right. So if you're coming as a family and you've all sheltered together, can the family sit together? Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
If I come with my extended family and there's 11 of us, does one have to sit off to the side? I mean, I hear you, and that's some of the things that we're working on. The other thing that we're working on, and I'd like to ask Supervisor Lagonia to get involved in this conversation, is where are you all going to get your PPE equipment? Where are you going to get, and not that you don't know you have to get it, but is it readily available? Do you have to go to 6 places to get it? And half of them you go there and it's not there and you're wasting your time that's needed to do other things in your business. So one discussion that we had was, is there an opportunity to find some type of a central service that would assist businesses and organizations similar to the bulk purchasing that the county's doing? And there's some discussion with the Hudson Business Coalition and Hudson Hall as to how that might work. But Rob, do you have some thoughts on how private sector businesses could adapt to these requirements?
I've been involved since day one. So day one, it was much more difficult than it is today to get certain PPE items. So masks, obviously, for your employees, my suggestion is that you do cloth masks, because if you're going to start buying throwaway masks, you're going to be going through a tremendous amount of those, and the cost is going to be detrimental to every business owner. So my suggestion is cloth masks. Now, in reference to cloth masks, you can get them on Amazon. You can get them from different places. I do have access to all of that, but it is all in large quantities. So unless somebody wanted to get together, and I've done a lot of very big orders, and the county is involved, and we're purchasing it through the county, and then we're redistributing it out. But for local businesses, as far as like thermometers go, a thermal thermometer is $120. Can I get them? Yes. Can I get cloth masks? Yes. I think I can get them in the smallest amount is boxes of 500 or 600. Shields and all the other items, they're available. But I would suggest, Sam's Club has things now loosening up. Restaurant Depot has things loosening up. Ginsberg's has masks. But even the throwaway masks now are 5 times what they cost prior to COVID. So you buy a box of 50 masks, you could be paying $1 or $2 per mask. And I will tell you that your staff will forget to bring it. Your staff will leave it home. Your staff, even though you gave them 3 already, they're going to say, oops, I forgot mine. Can I have another one? So those are real challenges for business, because it gets expensive. And if you have an employee who goes up and needs a mask, what are you going to say? No. And you can't reuse it. But the nice thing about cloth masks are they're washable. So my suggestion is that you take your employees that are your loyal employees that are there on a regular basis. You can't just give them one cloth mask. It doesn't work. The masks deteriorate pretty quickly, even the cloth masks. Even the ones we're buying, you can get maybe 15 washes out of them. And I will tell you that your employees aren't going to wash them as often as they need to be washed. So they get funky and they're hard to breathe out of. And I will tell you another thing about wearing masks. Those that are not used to wearing masks, it's a serious challenge, especially if you're in a restaurant environment. If you're wearing a mask and you're working in front of a stove, you're working in front of an oven, you're hustling around your restaurant, your staff starts to hyperventilate. There's challenges with that. So you want to get something that's not too heavy, because if it fits your face too tightly, none of us are going for N95 masks. These are not medical masks that we're looking to get. And N95 masks all have to be fitted by a professional. So it's not something we're looking to do. You want something that's fairly lightweight, that you can put on, that's washable, and that you have to breathe. Because I will tell you, it creates a lot of challenges. It sounds easy to put on a mask. It's not. If you have a takeout restaurant and they're answering the phone, it's hard for your customers to hear. Your staff starts to sweat in them. So it's something very important. I'd be happy to help out with where you can get everything, but we need a pass through for that, because I don't want to be collecting money and trying to figure out, who ordered it. And then somebody says, oh, I don't want it now. And after I have 5 extra thermometers for $120 a piece sitting around, and that will happen. So
one of the things that, we are looking at this, and we will update you on future calls. One idea that has come up and has been discussed publicly, so I'm not getting ahead of the process, and it's only an idea at this point, the feasibility of an organization like Hudson Hall, who could turn their ticket, electronic computerized ticket system into ordering materials and then being the conduit for that. And then, whether CEDC would, give them a small business loan to be able to do the initial purchase. I think what we would want to have in that case is some type of big in the price, so that without making it retail level, so that we're not, our security isn't 20 thermometers on the shelf in 5 years. But I think these are things that I know the Hudson Business Coalition and the Chamber have discussed independently. And, I think that we're looking at some of those solutions. And Rob, I think that, there may be some opportunity to get some insight from you, whether this is a practical.
Yeah, I'm happy to help. I will tell you that you should try to get as much hand sanitizer as you can. I think that's imperative. We've been open through all of this. We went from a full sit-down restaurant to just take out curbside and delivery, which we were not doing delivery prior to, but we have hand sanitizer all over the restaurant. So customers come in where they pick up, there are pump bottles there for them. My staff has them at all the phone stations. My kitchen staff has them everywhere. So that is something you should start ramping up.
Rob, do you have a good resource for that?
Wait, what?
Do you have a good resource for getting hand sanitizer in bigger quantities for facilities?
So again, because I've been doing it all for the county, I have not had to purchase any of that through any other, so as far as for like townships, the towns have had an easy access to getting hand sanitizers coming down from the state. I do have a bunch of hand sanitizers sitting in my restaurant in Chatham that I would be happy to give away for free. This was not state sanitizer. This was sanitizer that I got through a donation. So I do have a fair amount of that stockpiled. So if anybody's having a difficult time getting that, I'd be happy to give you some of that for free, at least to get started. There are issues with hand sanitizers too. The stuff you're getting now is almost a straight alcohol. So it comes out like vodka. It doesn't have aloe in it. So if you use a pump, it ends up splashing all over you. So you need to get some sort of misting bottle, because otherwise you just end up wasting it and ruining all your clothes. The other thing is it irritates your skin because it's pretty straight
Yeah.
alcohol. So all of these things are they don't sound like challenges, but they are challenges. So I will tell you, Sam's Club is starting to ramp up and get masks in and some of these items that you need. I know a lot of restaurant owners go to Sam's Club. I know Bob Lucky's on here. I've seen him at Restaurant Depot. They've started getting in masks and some other things. Ginsberg's, like, as I said, has masks. Ginsberg's also has signage now, 6 foot apart and some of those other things that they can order for you. So that's another place that you can get things. But those are really the items that you're going to need, are masks, hand sanitizer is huge. Gloves, would be just your kitchen staff predominantly. Even the CDC is not recommending gloves. So those are the items. But at this point, I would just start stockpiling and think about a plan that you're going to have for your staff as far as how many masks you're going to give them and how you're going to deal with that as they show up on a daily basis and forget them. So that's an issue.
Thank you, Rob. You have a dual role here, both as a restaurant owner and as a county supervisor and town supervisor. One of the other issues that we're seeing relates to those of you who have furloughed employees. The fact that the unemployment program with the extra $600 runs through July 31st. And second, as you bring people back or ask people who were working part-time for you to come back who are on unemployment, it really makes them disqualified for unemployment. So there's this whole scheduling and HR component. Have any of you had experience with that with your takeout operation, or are you thinking that through based on how you staff your restaurants now?
Well, go ahead, Bob.
I have, Mike, 2 questions. I mean, just kind of sort of answer what you're asking is, first, the 50% occupancy, we're in phase 3, does that, when you say 50% of the occupancy, is still the most, first and foremost, is the 6 feet distancing. So that number will go way down too. And when it comes to takeout, does these new requirements impact people who are just doing takeout, or just trying only when people are sitting down in your restaurant?
No, my understanding is that the requirement to affirm the state guidelines and have a safety plan in writing is now required of anyone who is operating pre-phase 1 under either essential business or the restaurant takeout provisions. So,
yeah, and also to answer your question, I think it is. I mean, what's happening around the country, people are finding it difficult to find people that have been laid off to come back since they've done very well. Many of them done well in the service industry. By far, they're making more money staying home than they are going back to work. So I think for some, it will be difficult. Fortunately, I've been able to keep a significant share of my staff working. So it won't, for me personally, it won't be a huge issue to keep going for a while. But I think for some, it may be difficult to get people back to
well,
work.
it's certainly a component of the overall strategy and business planning once you put the safety plan together. And as many of you know, CEDC runs both a SBA microloan program and a county revolving loan fund. And it's been run successfully for many years by Martha Lane, who is Bob's wife. And we have rapid recovery loans available for businesses who have been in business for more than 2 years, where the owner is willing to sign a personal guarantee with a 625 credit score, 6 months payment deferral. So the loan is really 5.5 years, and the payment comes out to about $260 a month. So, one of the issues I've read about, restaurant in Troy, the owner decided not to reopen. She estimated that it would be 15 to 20 grand to go from being closed for 2 months to restocking, buying extra supplies, pushing tables away, and feeling that although she had run a successful restaurant for 10 years, she didn't want to take that risk, not knowing how the ramp up would work, and basically decided she'd wait and decide to get back in the restaurant business at another time. So, when we look at the count of people who may close it's not they failed because they weren't successful, but that they were successful but decided not to take this new risk, which was, you know, you couldn't estimate what really the risk was, and you just weren't willing to go forward. So
I think the ramp up is going to be a very slow process for the restaurant industry, especially.
Which, you know, I think those of you who have been in the takeout, at least you understand what that base is, and hopefully, you know, those customers will continue if they're uncomfortable coming into the restaurant, while people who are not as uncomfortable will start to come back.
I just want to make a point too about the guidance, Mike, that you spoke of earlier. The guidance from the governor's office, because I've been involved since day one, I've read through every executive order 1,000 times because I'm advising people on the outside just as much as you're starting to advise people now. The guidance has been terrible. It has been weak. It has been incredibly vague, and I think it's probably been done that way on purpose. I'm part of a team of people that meets every day at 11 o'clock. We have attorneys there, and we sit around and try to decipher all of this information that comes up, or lack thereof of information, and it's awful. And sometimes we come out with a conclusion that we all disagree on, and including the attorneys, and the next day it changes. I anticipate that there will be more guidance as we get closer to opening, but I'm going to tell you that I doubt that guidance is going to guide you through this process. I think we're all going to have to do the best we can with this. We're going to have to take the information that's out there, as long as we're all doing our best and trying. I don't anticipate the government coming down and running into our businesses and looking and checking our records and all of these things unless there's a massive complaint. But you know, we as business people have to just do the best we can with this information, or lack thereof. I mean, today I got a question on golf courses. And if you try to find the information on golf courses, you could spend 6 hours. You can go in a big circle and you get right back to where you have no information. And I pulled some of that together for somebody today. And it's frankly unfortunate how little information that they're putting out there. You would think it would be simple. Can I open up my locker room? Can I open up a bathroom? You know, I mean, it is just not in there. It's not explicit at all. It's just incredibly frustrating for business owners. And I do think you have to weigh the potential cost of reopening and what that really means to you as a business owner to open up with a 50% occupancy or less, and trying to manage your staff, trying to manage all of that that's going to go along with that, including, I've been open through all of this, and it is a big challenge to just manage what we're doing. But as you said, Mike, for restaurants that haven't been open and then going to ramp back up, I'm going to tell you another thing. Food cost has gone through the roof since some of you that haven't been open are reopening. Some meats have gone up $2, $3, $4 a pound. Your menus you're going to have to look at. Take a peek at your menus, because there are items on there that if you put out at your last price, you may open up and be shocked to say, I'm losing money with this item. So I think there's a lot more to this you have to really dig into and look at before you just, me personally, when they open up at 50%, I doubt that I'm going to do it. I'm probably going to continue on with where I'm at till we get to a higher percentage of what we can open with, because the rules and guidelines, and by the time I bring back all the extra staff that I'm going to need, it's going to dig me in a deeper hole.
I'll be doing the same.
So my process from day one was to get to a new, completely different business plan. My business plan was to be lean and mean and to be able to survive, which meant getting rid of more than 50% of my staff. I went from probably 15 down to 5 or 6. We changed some of our menu items. We took items off right away. I limited the hours I was open. And in doing all of that, we're surviving. Can I survive like this forever? No, I don't want to. So unless things really change, but a 50% occupancy restaurant, starting putting up plexiglass and trying to get your staff to come to a table with a mask on, and I think it's an impossible thing to try to clean and disinfect and keep. Right now, we have the whole restaurant blocked off. So people come in the front door, it's completely blocked off. They're 20 feet from where my staff is. So they come in, there's a table there. My staff is 20 feet away. They yell out their name. They've already prepaid on the phone. We drop the food off on a table and they're out the door. We don't have to worry about cleaning bathrooms and all the disinfecting that's going on if you have people in and out and around your business. I don't know. I know all of your businesses because I've been in most of them, but these are the things you realistically have to look at as opposed to just the guidelines. because these are the realities. And I'd be happy to answer any of these questions outside of this forum if somebody wants to shoot me an email, a text, a phone call. But there's a lot to it. So I don't want to discourage anybody, but I'd rather not see people go out of business because they are trying to reopen and trying to make money in an impossible situation. So that's just my thoughts.
I think you're right on target, and it's that's why it's going to be so difficult. And I think, fortunately, for those of you who have been doing takeout, you have a perspective on this that many of the retail operations that weren't able to open haven't yet even imagined how difficult it's going to be.
Just one more point, Mike, I want to make too, is the mask situation, not just for your staff is a challenge, it's for your customers. Many of your customers will come in your business and they don't want to wear a mask and will not wear a mask. You as a business owner have to make that decision is to say, this person walks out, I lost 50, 60, 70, $80, or you let them in and you set it up in such a way that they're not anywhere near your employees. And that's a tough decision to make when somebody's hurting for business and needs revenue, and all of a sudden somebody has an $80 order and they walk in without a mask on and they get angry. They do, they get mad. I mean, a large percentage, the longer this goes on, your customers are angry. They don't want to wear anything. So just another thing to think about. That's another procedure and protocol you're going to need, because is your staff going to deal with that angry customer? Are you as an owner going to be there? So these are things that are realistic that are going on right now.
We did have a question if you could, those who are not speaking, put your mute button on so that I guess there was some feedback that was difficult for others to hear. We really appreciate input from Rob and the others who are in business. One question, can we have a breakout group solving PPP? Yes, we'll get back to you on that later. Great discussion, centralized places for business to go. Potentially a webinar or meeting on where we walk through the safety guidelines step by step. Interestingly enough, we had that conversation at our staff meeting today at CEDC. Katie Higgins is here from CEDC. Katie, we were going through the staff program that we're putting together for our office, and this very question came up about creating some type of, if not a webinar, at least a checklist so that you don't get lost in the information that's not really there in the first place, and how you supplement it with information from National Restaurant Association or State Restaurant or others. And again, none of that's going to all be applicable to each of your situations. So you're going to have to, read it, absorb it, and use your best judgment.
Yeah, hi everyone. I think we are starting to hear a lot of the same concerns come up, and I think there is an opportunity, as you mentioned, Rob. Not everything is as straightforward and easy to follow as we might want it to be. So coming up with some type of step-by-step toolkit that is easily shareable and followable. And I think, as there are representatives from across the industries, there could be an opportunity just for a more focused conversation about addressing supply and communication of those guidelines so that we have the best coordinated and easy to follow steps that we can. So stay tuned for, how we can approach that as a potential next step, because it sounds like it will have a really big impact on everybody that's joining us for these calls.
As a general question to all of you, when phase 3 is implemented, how likely are any of you ready to go out to a restaurant, or bars won't be open in the first part, but just how's everybody feeling out there about going to restaurants?
I live in Catskill, and I'm actually a high risk person. I have Crohn's disease and I'm on a medication that puts me in high risk. So I haven't been going out. I have somebody who shops for me and picks up food, but I do go for the car ride just to get out of the house. So that being said, I will say that there are a lot of restaurants in Catskill that are doing the right thing, and there are some restaurants who aren't. My person who goes in to pick up food had an incident over the weekend where he went into a restaurant and one of the owners and the worker weren't wearing masks, and there was a customer in there not wearing a mask, having a couple of drinks, waiting for his food. And, it upset me a lot because, it's like, so what do you do? So my person who goes in gets the food, he's got a mask on, everything's cool, but it's like he almost got mask shamed, like, oh, hey, what are you doing? Why are you wearing a mask, kind of a thing, So I'm not comfortable, but I mean, I'm a risk category. If I wasn't in an at-risk category, I would want to go back to going to restaurants once they reopen. And it's not so much that I'm in fear of the restaurants. It's like Rob was saying, there's a lot of people out there who are like angry, who are fed up with this, and they're not wearing masks. It's more about the people who are going to be going than the actual what the restaurants are doing. I think the majority of restaurants are doing what they need to do because it's a business, it's their livelihood. They know what they need to do, but there's a lot of people who aren't. And I think just talking to my friends, a lot of them are very reluctant to go back. And it's hard because they want to support small business, but they don't want to take the risk of a bunch of idiots showing up, not wearing masks and not doing the right thing.
Bob, if you look at the statistics, the restaurants that have been able to open up, they're not doing well, even though they're
Right. I've seen that. Yeah.
They're allowed to open to 50%. They're at 10%. And you're
Right.
asking restaurant owners and business people to all of a sudden become healthcare workers. It's a big challenge for a restaurant owner. We're good at what we do, but you're not good at being a nurse and trying to get your staff to wash their hands every 2 seconds and wearing masks and these types of things. So they are challenges for sure. Absolutely challenges. And you're going to have to be hard on your staff. I mean, right from day one, I let people go that didn't adhere to my rules. I mean, you have to be able to do that because you're going to get, and then I will tell you, your staff will get in line because they're going to realize that it's a different time. If you don't do that, then, you're going to have all of these problems. But taking people's temperatures every day, that's a real challenge. I mean, think about it. I mean, we can say we're going to do all of that. It's a real challenge. What's a business owner going to do when their head chef shows up and his temperature's a little bit high? Are you going to sit him down in the office and say, let me take a second test? And then what are you going to do? Close your restaurant? And I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying these are the decisions that you're going to have to make as business owners. Real challenging.
Bob, my thought process is mid-July, I'd go back in a restaurant, but listening to Liz and Bob or Rob, if you only get 10% of your sit-down customers back, and now someone who has a compromised immune system or some other fear decides not to come for takeout because they got to come into the bar area to pick up the food or you're bring it out to them, you could lose business from your takeout business by opening to not make up the business with the people in the restaurant.
One thing just to put out there, and Jeff, maybe you can talk a little bit about this, is, it sounds like it's clear that the reopening will definitely have an impact on people's comfort with coming for a dine-in service. But right now, Columbia County Tourism and the Chamber are aggregating a list of restaurants that are doing takeout and delivery. Jeff, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that and how businesses can get involved.
Yes, I can talk about that. The Chamber, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, along with County Tourism, began putting together a list of all open restaurants, no matter if they were a Chamber member or not, that were offering curbside or some form of takeout or drive delivery service. If you go onto our Chamber Facebook page, which we frequently update those lists, if you're not seen in that the list of restaurants who are already currently operating, just send us a comment and we'll add you to the complete list. We're also working on a buy local, shop local campaign where we have some signs, some yard signs that just telling people to in this time to buy local, to remember us first. I just want to make a quick reference to Bob Lucky's question, which means you know, I know there's a lot of discomfort and people are scared for their lives, but you know, I see myself going back into a restaurant probably the first or second week in June, as long as I know that the businesses have taken some of the precautions that I've heard Rob and some of the precautions I know Bob have taken, adhered to. I think we have to continue to communicate that our businesses do act responsibly and are trying their very best to adhere to whatever guidelines the CDC, the state health, the county health departments is requiring us. And I think that word of mouth will go a long way in restoring some of the confidence that's been lost during this COVID crisis. But again, if you want to make sure that you that we are promoting that your business is currently open or will be opening during whatever phase that you're coming, phase 1, 2, or 3, please just email us at the chamber at mail@columbiachamber-ny.com, or you can leave a message on our Facebook page and someone will get back with you. Thank you, Katie, for that handoff.
I think you're muted.
Is there anyone on the call who hasn't spoken that would like to ask a question or comment or contribute to the dialogue that's been going on? We still have 22 people, so.
I was Mark Scrivo. I was going to speak. One of my children was not wanting that to happen, but I just want to say, as you know, back to the bigger question of comfortability with being out in public. You know, I think it's important to note that there are a lot of parallel efforts from different task forces and organizations that are working to help create public space and open space and outdoor space for restaurants and for so hopefully that can aid in this process of restaurants being able to have more outdoor seating. I mean, obviously it doesn't solve any of the issues that we're dealing with, but I think it will help, you know, comfortability in terms of if you can do carry out or maybe sit for a little bit. And, you know, certainly on main streets, like in Chatham and in Hudson. And and I'm sure, and I know you're aware of all these efforts, Mike, and probably most people on the call.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, we're at 2 o'clock. We want to thank you all for participating. This was a really good call. Some of the earlier ones, people were still absorbing all the information because of the activity that many of you have been in being open during the last 8 weeks or so has really contributed to a deeper understanding of what everyone's going to be up against. Again, on behalf of Columbia Economic Development and Chamber, we'll give Jeff a minute to wrap up as well. Please don't hesitate to reach out. We want to thank the Board of Supervisors and Chairman Matt Morrell for setting this group up. We're both honored to be the co-chairs, and we look forward to further dialogue and discussion with you. And please reach out to us at any time about anything. And if we don't know it, we can try to get an answer. And if we can't get an answer, we'll at least commiserate with you. Jeff?
Thanks, Mike. I want to again thank Supervisor Lagonia and the other supervisors from the Economic Development Committee for authorizing this committee under Chairman Morrell's chairmanship. We're trying our very best to be as responsive to your needs and concerns. If you email us at info@columbiacomeback.com, we generally try to turn around your questions within a 24-hour, 48-hour time period. So remember that. And if you want to take a look at any of our resources, go to the ColumbiaComeback.com page, and there are 2 buttons that you want to look at: meetings. So we have a meeting coming up Friday, and we have a full committee meeting coming up Thursday, May 26th. Friday's meeting is specifically for phase 4. But then there are also, there's a button there that you can click on for resources related to your particular phase in your industry sector that you can derive some of the best practices for. So we always want to point you to that. If you have any other questions, like specifically for us, go to info@ColumbiaComeback.com, and those you'll get a box where you can email us. And again, we turn those questions around within the 24-hour, 48-hour time frame. If you need a template for developing a safety plan, go to www.ny.gov/sites/govern, or you can go to ny.gov/files/Adams/files. I know that's a lot.
Are these links on our website, Jeff?
Yes, they're linked through the website as well. So you can find that information there, but we're just trying to give you as much information as you can handle, and to try to give you the best chances of trying to restart your businesses if you feel that's in your best interest to do so at this time. So just want to thank everyone for their time today, and we appreciate you, and we're here to help you. Thanks, Mike.
Have a good day.
All right, thank you.